What if it rained food? What if Earth was a cube? What if we had 9 lives? What if bits could fly? It's absurd. If money grew on trees, if we didn't have knees, if we walked through life slightly magnetical, it's absurd. Absurd Hypotheticals.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
And you guys might remember from last week, I had a little $5 experiment going on in my office.
Can you run it by us one more time for those who didn't listen to last week's?
Yeah, so if you didn't listen last week, basically someone found a $5 bill on the ground, and they, instead of like keeping it or asking if it was anyone else's, they left it on a table, and the table is like in an area where everyone walks and everyone can see it. And no one wanted to take it because they didn't know whose it was, and it just stayed there for days. And I wanted to see like how long it would actually stay there. And then you guys wanted me to go, because we recorded that on a Thursday, and you're like, you have to go in tomorrow on Friday, and you have to like plant another $5 bill there, and it'll be hilarious.
A second $5 bill to add to the mystery.
Everyone will be like, where did that come from? What's going on? So that was my plan going in on Friday. So to do this, I had to like wake up early, and I woke up pretty early. I woke up at 6 o'clock, and I got in at 7.
Oh man!
Into the office at 7. I stopped at the ATM first because I didn't have any cash on me.
Right, which was important
Can you
here.
even get $5 bills at an ATM?
No, they only give $20 bills.
There's some where you can ask for $25 and they'll give you like a 20 and a 5. I've seen that before.
Yeah, but it was too early and nothing was open yet.
Yeah.
So like the bank, because I went to like the ATM at the bank, and they have an ATM section and a bank section. The bank section is closed.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I can just leave at 20. That's fine. I get into the office at 7 a.m. and the person that sits next to the $5 bill, he was already in the office.
Oh no!
Oh no.
So my plan was ruined.
He's guarding it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how early people get in. Usually I get in at like 9, and I know that's like a little later than everyone else, but I didn't expect people to get in at 7. So obviously I couldn't do it in front of him. So I was like, okay, it's a Friday. A lot of times people leave early on Fridays. Our office is like empty on Fridays. So I'll just wait. I'll stay a little later than normal.
Chris doing a 14-hour workday so he can plant $5 on a table. This is the commitment we have to the podcast, everybody.
I know.
Right.
Just for this intro topic. So yeah, that was my plan. I was going to stay late. And I actually went out for lunch, and I broke my 20 during lunch, and I got
Perfect.
some 5s. So I didn't have to leave the 20. The thing is, though, like sometime between, because I after lunch, I like got up to go to the bathroom. It was around like 3 o'clock, and I walked past it, and the $5 bill was gone.
No!
What?
Who took
It was
it?
gone. Someone took it in the middle of the day because it was there when I left for lunch.
Fuck, did you find out who it was?
So I think what happened, I don't actually know who took it, but I think what happened is we have like a bunch of people in our office that are moving to other parts of the office, and like everyone is reorganizing their seats. And I think it was probably the person that was sitting there. It could have been someone else, but someone took advantage of the chaos of everyone moving.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Social faux pas right there. You
I
can't just
know.
take those $5.
Well, that's a shame.
So I was unable to plant an extra bill. The experiment is over. I feel like the results of the experiment were sort of like they're not real results because this whole office moving thing was
Right.
Like,
It's a fly in the ointment. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So I still want to like. I feel like
Just plant another $5 next week and just have it be back.
well the thing is like this experiment. I feel like you can only do it once with the same people. Like people are going to act differently if it happens again. I feel like it'll probably someone will take it earlier if it happens again.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know. Why don't you do it in your office?
But the problem is you need it to. There's a very real chance that when you put the $5 down, someone just takes it immediately.
Yeah,
Like,
you
it
need
was a
you need to
very-
get past that initial period.
Yeah, which is a tough sell.
Yeah, my office is far too small. There's like, at most, like 4 of us in the office.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
not
it's
going to work.
That's not
Yeah.
going to work for me.
I don't know if I have a place with the right like amount of throughput.
Yeah, we have like a main hallway that everyone walks through, and it's not really a hallway where there are walls. So there's a wall on one side, and then on the other side there's desks, and everyone walks through there. So
Yeah, the only thing I could do is like a kitchenette, but I don't know if that's the right.
that could work.
Could.
Or like, is there like a table next to your bathroom or something?
Not real. So the problem is I work like in the same section of the building as like the call center, which is a huge amount of throughput, and like even the kitchenettes are like shared between us. So like I don't know. I feel like there's gonna be too many people, or someone's definitely gonna take it.
Right.
What if you make it harder to take? What if you like put it like on a little pedestal with like a little glass case over it so it looks important?
Well, that's...
And like the implication is like, hey, this is like the first $5 this company ever made. We're gonna put it on display, but like it's definitely not.
Well, that's tainting the results, though, Marcus.
Yeah, that is tainting the results.
No, this is just another fun
It's
experiment.
a different experiment.
I don't care whether the human psyche will take $5 off an empty table. I just want to sow chaos.
Well, I want it to last a decent amount. Like, I don't want to spend $5 for something that's going to last a few hours.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what this is? This is the equivalent of the high school prank of gluing a dime to his chair.
Right, but higher stakes because it's a 5.
It's the adult version, so it's worth 50 times
Yeah,
more.
is that prank adjusted for inflation?
Do we want to move on to our question of the day? Our main
Yes,
question?
let's do that.
So today's question is, how would an underwater city work? So this one was a little bit different in that we're a bit more cooperative in this answer. So designing an underwater city obviously is a pretty big task to do it kind of, quote unquote, right.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of split the different aspects that this city would need to survive. We split between us, but we coordinated our answers to make sure that all of them are, working together and it all works as one big whole.
I mean, mainly the biggest thing that we coordinated was just how big the city needed to be, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So you found, you said like 2,500 people is sort of the range you were looking at?
Yeah, so in the United States of America, the minimum population to define a city is 2,500 people. And I assume to make this work, we're going to want to use that very minimum number
very minimum.
to just qualify that as just like, yes, it is barely a city.
There were some places where it was like 30,000, right?
Yeah, Japan was 30,000. Most European countries are like 2 to 2,500. Japan was like an outlier at 30,000 to consider themselves a city.
I think that's a landmass situation right there.
Yeah, which I guess just shows the population density in Japan as a whole. When you have
Right.
to start calling your cities towns and just to differentiate them.
Right, exactly.
And then we had to decide how much space that amount of people took up.
Right.
So I found the densest city in the world, which is in the Philippines, Malina, and they're 107,000 people per square mile. So if you work that out, it's about like a quarter of a square mile is like the area that we're looking at.
Right. Which would be then half a mile each way.
Yeah, half a mile diameter.
Awesome. I think that's the main stuff. And Chris, you covered our first thing, which is just the most pressing concern of an underwater city.
Pressing.
Literally pressing concern. Didn't mean to do that. That's not written in here as a bad joke.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
I looked at water pressure because obviously we're in water and water has pressure and it's a big deal. So I wanted to see like how far down we can actually build our city to like withstand these water pressures, because if you get deep, the pressures get really, really, really high. So to start out, I looked at the deepest part of the ocean, and it is the Challenger Deep, which is at the south end of the Mariana Trench, and it goes 35,853 feet deep.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Pretty deep.
And at that pretty deep. And at that depth, the pressure is 1,099 atmospheres, which means it's 1,099 times the air pressure at sea level. And translated, that's like 16,000 psi. Just to put that into context, that's basically the weight of a T-Rex bouncing on an SD card.
Okay.
That's the units
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but everywhere. So there's like an SD
lot of
card
T-Rexes.
everywhere, and there's a T-Rex on every single SD card.
So our food problems are solved. There's just so many T-Rexes to eat.
Yeah,
Boom,
no.
done.
So first I want to look at, is it even possible for us to dive that deep? And yes, we've done it a few times. We haven't done it that many times. We've done it a couple times though. So in 1960, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh made a dive in their vessel is called the Trieste. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think it's like an Italian or a French name. I actually don't know. But this was the first vessel to reach the Challenger Deep. And they basically used ballast. So there was ballast on their vessel that made them sink. And then they would release the ballast when they're at the bottom. And they had tanks full of gasoline that were like more buoyant than the water that let them float up.
That is like the lowest, ballsiest, like low-tech submarine I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
It's like we're just gonna make an underwater hot air balloon, and we're gonna take it to the deepest point of the ocean where there's all these T-Rexes running around.
So the actual like compartment that they were in is just like a sphere, and it was 5 inches thick of steel in like a sphere, and there's 2 of them fitting in there. I actually don't know how big the sphere was, but yeah, it had to be 5 inches thick. And then they had like a small acrylic viewing window so they could see outside. And just because it's underwater and you don't have a lot of light, they had light bulbs, but the light bulbs had to withstand the pressure too. So they had quartz light bulbs.
Ooh.
And actually during their descent, like as they passed 30,000 feet, one of the outer acrylic windows started to crack.
Oh,
wow.
man.
They still went to the bottom. They didn't stay as long as they had originally planned. They only stayed for 20 minutes and then they went back up, probably because of the cracked window.
Do not blame them, even a little bit.
But yeah, the total descent took 4 hours and 47 minutes, and then it took 3 hours and 15 minutes to get back up. And they spent 20 minutes down there. So, worth it?
I mean, it's only one day. Like, just one day of your life and you've been to the bottom of the ocean. That's a cool
That's
little thing
true.
to check off the bucket list.
I mean, there's some of those like crazy roller coasters that take like 20 seconds to go through that you wait for like 3 hours for. So I would say that they actually did pretty good.
Yeah, that's the ratio there, yeah.
You're doing all right.
So those are the first people to reach the Challenger Deep. And then the second, or I guess the third person, because there's 2 on that first dive, but the third person to do it didn't happen for another like 52 years. And it was in 2012. Do you guys want to guess who it was?
Wait, hold on.
Oh, I should know it. I read the story.
Is it James Cameron?
It is James Cameron.
Yes, I knew it.
So James Cameron, apparently he got like super into deep sea stuff
This is true.
before he got into this Avatar thing and making like 6 Avatar movies. He was super into deep ocean stuff. So he actually made this. This was the second manned dive to the Challenger Deep, and it was the first solo dive. So he holds that record. And the vessel is a little different. So there's still a steel sphere. It was 2.5 inches thick. But then for their like flotation, sinking, they still use the ballast to sink. But instead of tanks of gasoline, the entire body of the vessel on top was made of something called isofloat, which is a syntactic foam. And it's basically a bunch of tiny hollow glass spheres suspended in resin. And it's super lightweight, but it can withstand really high pressures. And they actually use this stuff. They can like 3D print submarine hulls with this foam.
Oh.
It's actually really cool material. So his descent took 2 hours and 37 minutes. And he spent 3 hours on the ocean floor. So much more significant amount of time. And so nothing cracked when he was down there, but his hydraulic equipment did fail for like taking samples and stuff. So it wasn't like a flawless dive.
Right.
Could you imagine going to the bottom of the ocean and there's like a really cool, like, I don't know what kind of sample would be down there. I guess maybe you can try and catch a fish or like pick up a clam. And you have like this robot arm that's like right outside your window. And you're just like, all right. And you're like playing the crane game and it just stops.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
That's exactly
It's
what
right
I
there!
saw. Exactly what I saw was the crane game thing where the like claw goes around it and it starts to lift up and it goes and it just drops out and stops working. You're like, no, it was right there.
Aw. So those are the 2 big dives to the Challenger Deep. There was one more, but there wasn't that much information on it. It was more recent. I think it was like last year or something, but there's no information on it for some reason.
is it the James Cameron one or the one from last year where they found the plastic bag down there?
I don't know what you're talking about.
It might not have been the Challenger Deep, but they did a dive to the Mariana Trench, and I think it was the deepest point in the ocean, and they found a plastic bag there, which is kind of depressing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
depressing. So those are two dives, and there are some common design choices between these two vessels, mainly the spherical shape. So sphere is actually really good in water just because the water pressure is coming from every single direction, and it acts perpendicular to the surface. So sphere is good for that. And then they used a combination of steel and acrylic. So steel for the structural part, and then acrylic for like windows if you want to see outside.
Right.
So we can use these commonalities in the design in our own design. So we talked about this while we were discussing the question about whether it would just be buildings in the water, or if there would be like some sort of dome. And I think we settled on a dome. So the spherical shape like lends itself to the dome. It matches. So, but there are different kinds of domes. And I actually found, so there's something called a geodesic dome. It's like it has a skeletal frame with like triangle patterns, and the triangle patterns are the structural part of it. And then you can see through the triangles. So it's not like a solid steel sphere. So at Epcot, the giant ball at Epcot, that's actually a geodesic dome. The spaceship Earth, I think it's called.
The thing you think of when you think of Epcot.
Yeah.
That thing.
The giant golf ball thing. And that is 165 feet in diameter, which is pretty big. It's not what we need. So our dome, it needs to be half a mile in diameter. So it's roughly 16 times the size of the Epcot ball. So I wanted to look at the biggest geodesic dome on Earth, just to see like how close we've gotten. And that is in Japan, the Fukuoka, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Fukuoka Dome. It's a baseball stadium, and it is 708 feet in diameter, which is really, it's only like a quarter of the size of what we need. So it's actually pretty close. So like our half-mile dome doesn't sound too far-fetched. So the dome it's going to have a steel frame, and then like in between the steel frame, there's going to be acrylic siding because we decided we wanted to be able to see outside the dome. We don't want it to just be a solid wall. So the way these geodesic domes are set up is they have frequencies. So it's like a 1 frequency geodesic dome is just a triangle, and it's repeating, but like the way the pattern is just one triangle. And then a 2 frequency geodesic dome is like sort of a triforce, I guess. So there's 2 triangles on one side of the triangle, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And then it just keeps on increasing if you get more frequencies. So more frequency is actually stronger. It makes the structure stronger. So we want more. And the Epcot ball is actually 8 frequency. So I wanted to go as high as I could with the frequency, and I found they have like calculators online to like calculate how much materials you need to build one of these, because I guess you can just build them in your backyard, and they have kits and stuff. But the highest they went with the frequency with these calculators was 6 frequency. And 6 frequency isn't nearly as much as we want. I used it anyway just as like a starting point. And for a 6 frequency dome that's half mile in diameter, we need 146,500 linear feet of steel. And the span for our acrylic siding would be 173 feet. So that's a pretty large span. We want to decrease that. So what I ended up doing was I figured out that like if you increase the frequency, then it like multiplies the amount of materials by a certain amount. So I did that, and I ended up using a 96 frequency geodesic dome.
Heck yeah.
All right.
Up that number. 6 to 96 in no time flat.
And that was mainly to get the span of our acrylic down to, so I got it down to 11 feet, which is manageable. And then, yeah, we have a lot of steel too. So how large do our steel members need to be? They need to be able to withstand 16,000 psi of pressure. So in order to do this, I looked at the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, as reference. And the foundation of the Burj Khalifa is designed to support 992 million pounds. And it includes 192 steel piles that are each 4.9 feet in diameter. But each of these piles, so if you divide the design weight by the number of piles, each of these piles is designed to withstand 18,000 psi of compression. So that's perfect for us. That's like,
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
works out. So we're going to use basically just the piles from the Burj Khalifa.
They won't miss them.
No. We're not going to make our own. We're going to steal them from the Burj Khalifa. So the weight of this, if you take the linear footage of the amount of steel we need and the weight of the steel is 10.7 billion pounds of steel.
Okay.
That sounds heavy.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, a little smidge. A smidge.
So next, how thick does our acrylic need to be? Because we have acrylic siding. We don't want it to crack because we're underwater and it's very bad if it cracks. So with the span of 11 feet, in order to withstand 16,000 psi of pressure, we need 2.5 feet thick acrylic. And you thought the steel was heavy.
Oh, no.
This amount of acrylic weighs 283 billion pounds.
Okay.
So our total structure weight is 293.7 billion pounds. It's a lot of weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
That's a really big number.
Yep.
But the thing is, we're in water, and water has a buoyant force that pushes on objects that are in it. So I was like, okay, does this buoyant force, like, cancel out the weight?
Yeah, does our 293 billion pound city float?
So the way buoyant force is calculated is dependent on the volume of the object. It doesn't really matter what's in the object. It's just the volume and how much, like, of that object is displaced in the water or submerged in the water. So the volume of our dome is going to be 4.8 billion cubic feet. So with that volume, we're going to have a buoyant force of 1.37 billion kilonewtons. So if you convert the weight of our materials into kilonewtons, the weight is 1.31 billion kilonewtons. So we're actually pretty close to each other. The buoyant force is actually a little more than our weight. So the entire structure is actually going to float.
So our 491 billion pound city does float.
It does float. And you might think like 1.37 compared to 1.31, they're really close. But the thing is, we're talking about billions of kilonewtons. So that 0.06 difference is actually 60 million kilonewtons of difference in force. So the structure is going to float and it's going to, like, that upward force is a lot, which isn't necessarily good for our city because we want it to stay on the ground.
Ideally.
Yes.
We don't want it to float up.
As most cities like to do.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was looking into, like, how can we cancel out this force? But the thing is, we don't really need to, because the way that buoyant force works is that, or the reason there is a buoyant force is because there's water pressure pushing on every single side of an object, and the water on the bottom of the object is, like, denser. The pressure is higher than at the top, so it pushes upward. But if our dome is at the very, very bottom of the ocean, it's touching the ground, there's a complete seal around the perimeter, there is no water to push up. So there is no buoyant force. So we don't have to worry about that. So we just have to make sure that our foundation and, like, the seal around doesn't break. Because if it does break, we're in trouble. We're just going to shoot up.
Just so you guys know, if the seal breaks whatsoever, we will shoot very quickly up above the ocean. You will probably all die.
Yeah, probably.
Just know that before you live in the city.
You
signed a
knew the
waiver.
risk. Yeah, you signed a waiver. So now we're at the bottom of the ocean. We have a structure that can withstand the pressures. But now that we don't have buoyant force, we actually have the total weight of the materials, and we have the downward water pressure pushing down. All the forces going down. And I don't know what the bearing capacity of the ocean floor is. I tried to find it, but there wasn't a lot of information on that.
For some reason.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to assume it's pretty dense, but let's say that we need to reduce it a little bit. What we can do is we can actually attach... So I mentioned that material before with the ISOFloat is like the foam with the glass balls that was on the James Cameron vessel thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We can use that. So we can make like a giant ISOFloat balloon above our city to counteract the weight of the materials. And I actually calculated how big that balloon would have to be to completely counteract the weight. So the volume of the balloon would have to be 4.4 billion cubic feet. So that means that the the diameter of the balloon would have to be 2,040 feet in diameter.
Billions and billions and billions of cubic feet.
And that's assuming that like it's just a shell of a balloon and there's air inside. If it's completely made of the isofoam, then you have to account for the weight. And I just completely ignored the weight of the isofloat. So
Right.
it's going to be probably more than that. But I mean, we can reduce the materials a little bit, but probably not entirely. That's at the deepest part of the ocean. We can sort of build it. That's an extreme case. I don't think we have to go to the deepest part of the ocean. And if we don't, then we can reduce our materials.
By like a lot?
By a lot, yes. I just wanted to see like the max, like what we could do. And we also mentioned like you could maybe break it into smaller domes. That might make it easier and you might have lesser materials that way. But I went with the one giant dome.
One giant dome for all mankind.
Yeah. So, Marcus, what did you do?
All right, so now that we have our empty city bubble that theoretically doesn't break or float away or get eaten by T-Rexes or anything like that, we got to power the dang thing. If we're going to have a city, we're going to need electricity. And so the tricky thing about, generating power deep down in the sea is that you need fuel to make power. And as we've seen in a couple other episodes, you need a lot of fuel to create to keep a power plant going. Like a coal power plant needs trainloads and trainloads of coal each day just to get going. So you can do nuclear power. Nuclear power is probably the most portable because you can get the energy density of nuclear material is just astronomically high. So you can bring a small amount of nuclear material down and use that, but then you have to get rid of your nuclear waste, and yeah, you're at the bottom of the ocean, but also you kind of want to not poison the ocean immediately around you, I imagine. And I don't know if I want a nuclear power plant in my tiny enclosed bubble. So I was looking at other options, and there was one really cool method I found that's kind of like a budding technology now called electrolysis. So electrolysis is basically you can take water, good old H2O, and if you induce an electric current through it, you can actually separate it into pure hydrogen and pure oxygen. And so this is great. This is great for two reasons. Number one, we're going to need oxygen. So that's already part of that. That's already helping us there. And the pure hydrogen is actually a fuel source. So hydrogen gas, if you have a kilogram of pure hydrogen, it's actually the equivalent of a gallon of gasoline as far as power goes. So you can burn that for fuel. So I was looking through if there's any technology that actually, any larger scale power plants that do this. And they have some, but the one that caught my eye is the Idaho National Laboratory is doing experiments now with high temperature electrolysis. So this electrolysis system is not usually very efficient. You can use it. They usually use it to create hydrogen because hydrogen is easily stored and compressible. So you can use the hydrogen gas for applications where you need to bring a lot of fuel in a small space. But sometimes it's not even net positive fuel efficiency. But the high temperature one actually is. So to kind of cheat a little bit on the efficiency for these high temperature electrolysis calculations, I actually want to put our city on top of a hydrothermal vent. And so the heat coming out of a hydrothermal vent, the water's at about 400 degrees Celsius coming out of the average vent. The high temperature hydrolysis needs about 800, but if you're starting at 400, you're saving yourself a lot of energy just going from 4 to 8, which would be good because, like I was saying, the efficiency is kind of an issue. So when running at the full power, their system will consume 15 kilowatts of energy to produce 500 grams of hydrogen, which gives you 16.35 kilowatts of energy. So you go from you use 15 to make 16.3. Not great. This is obviously using a lot of energy to make not a lot of energy. So we want to save on that efficiency a little bit. And my next concern was whether, if we're using this method, if we can even generate just rate-wise enough power to power our city. Because we need so much power per hour to run all our things. And if, the 1.35 kilowatts that we're getting as output isn't anything, then it's just a no-go. It's just a non-starter. So Their system, the one that they tested, is a quote-unquote scaled-down version, and it produced 500 grams of hydrogen in 1 hour. So it made half a gallon of gasoline equivalent in 1 hour of work. And you have to cut that efficiency down because, you use 15 kilo. So you use like, 0.4 gallons of gasoline to make 0.5 gallons of gasoline. So I was like, well, let me dismiss this. I almost threw it right out, but then I kept reading. And so like, well, this is just the proof of concept. The actual plant, the full-size plant, would generate 2.5 kilograms of hydrogen each second instead of each hour.
That's
big difference.
better. Yeah.
So going with that, now 2.5 kilograms per second brings us to 303 megawatts of energy every hour, which is actually now in the realm of like regular power plants. It's like probably half of like a good-sized coal power plant. That said, 303 megawatts in hydrogen, we're using a lot of energy to make that. And like I said, it is helpful that we're on this hydrothermal vent to reduce the amount of energy we need, that 15-16 comparison. But I'm going to stay conservative and not count a negative there. So we net 25 megawatts of electrical energy from this electrolysis process. But what's great about it is that it doesn't create waste. It produces oxygen as a byproduct. And we have an infinite amount of water to feed to it. Like, we don't have to bring anything in to run this energy. So the question is, how much energy do we actually need for our city of 2,500 people? A city of 1 million people needs about 1,500 megawatts of energy, including industry and homes and utilities and all that. So doing some very high-tech dividing, a city of 2,500 people only needs 3.75 megawatts, and now we're generating 25. So we're doing pretty good. We actually have more than enough energy. But we do have to worry about actually a good amount of our energy is going to go to heating our bubble. So if we're using the heat of the hydrothermal vent to create energy, I'm sure we can use some of it to heat the dome, but I want to kind of see how much energy we're losing per second through our acrylic glass into the ocean. So kind of one of the assumptions I made here is we have like this, this tesseract structure, but I think we have to at least either we have to insulate the outside somehow, either by just having the acrylic all the way around and then the steel supporting it from the inside, or having another type of insulating thing to get it to the same properties. Because as far as heat transfer goes, acrylic's a pretty good insulator. Steel is not. So the coefficient that determines how quickly heat passes through a material is 0.2 for acrylic and 20 for steel. So steel transfers heat into its environment 100 times faster than acrylic will. So it's just going to bleed heat out into the ocean, which is very cold at deeper depths.
It is. This is true.
It's approximately freezing. So it's about 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and we want to keep our temperature inside, at least I counted 66 degrees as the minimum that we would need. So assuming that the whole thing is acrylic, we're losing about 5 megawatts of heat energy into the ocean that's just bleeding out from our dome into the cold ocean, which is actually more than all the power that we need to actually run our city. So we have 5 megawatts there and 3.75. So we're still under our 25 megawatts of electricity here. So we're doing quite good on that front. As far as energy goes, we're doing pretty good. And even if this electrolysis process, like I said, so this is I didn't have so much information on how big this full scale plant would be. Creating 2.5 kilograms of hydrogen a second seems like it might be a bigger production than I might imagine. It might not fit in our little city. So I looked at other options, and what nice thing about hydrothermal vents is that there's actually been studies on generating power just from the heat from these vents. So some countries use geothermal power already. Like, I know my grandparents' home in Germany is actually it's actually heated by a geothermal well. So they dig down, and they basically just dig down deep, put like a metal pole down, and then use that pole to conduct heat upwards and, turn that into power somehow. So they've done studies that the average thermal vent can actually just produce 15 megawatts of power anyway, just through thermal energy. So even without the whole crazy electrolysis system, we can get 15 megawatts of power and power our city that way. So we have multiple options, and I think you can use both in tandem. So really, we are not only green, we're like producing excess energy, which is super cool. So we can heat our dome, we can power our dome, and then I mentioned that we produce oxygen as a byproduct for, having breathable air. So I was wondering, are we producing enough air naturally to have all our people breathe in our big dome just from our electricity processes? So according to NASA, they use a figure of 0.84 kilograms per person per day that's of breathable oxygen that they need. So times 2,500 people, we're going to need 2,000 kilograms of oxygen a day. Based on getting 2.5 kilograms of hydrogen per second, if you take the oxygen part off of that, and because if you look at water, it's 2 kilograms of water is hydrogen and 16 of it is oxygen. If you look at the molecular weights, we're producing 1.7 million kilograms of oxygen a day, and we only need 2,100. So one thing I haven't solved yet or found a use for is we have a lot of extra oxygen.
What do we do with this extra oxygen?
That we are producing. And we can just dump this into the ocean. The ocean likes oxygen in it, I think, for life. It's good to have extra oxygen in the ocean. And the ocean is more than big enough to absorb that much oxygen from our city. But the number 1.7 million kilograms per day kind of is kind of why I looked up the second thermal power, because I'm not sure how much I'm believing this 2.5 kilograms a day anymore, now that I'm actually talking about it. But this hydrothermal event does a lot of great things for us. It can just heat. It can help heat. It can help power. It gives us some flowing water to.
It's like our underwater sun.
Exactly. But now it's for humans instead of just for stupid little shrimps and clams that stick to it.
Yeah.
So we're good. We're good power wise. And I think we should I want to now do this just for regular power. This would be cool to do, except you have to build a very, very expensive dome with 4 billion pounds of steel and sink it into the ocean. So that's a small problem.
With a giant ISO-float balloon.
Yeah, that might be problematic as far as building the practical applications, but I'm not too worried about those on this podcast. Ben, you're covering the rest of the stuff, right?
Yes.
Everything else.
Everything else. So mainly what I looked at was food, because obviously people and kind of need to eat. I would say.
I thought you were going to say we like to eat, but no, we need to eat.
I was going to say like to eat, but it's actually quite further than that. Yeah. So we're talking about food. We obviously don't want to just have to ship in all of our food, because with 2,500 people, that's going to be a very big undertaking. We want to be at least predominantly self-sufficient. So the first question we have to answer is, how much sunlight are we actually going to have? Because that's going to really, determine how we can get our food. So the ocean is kind of divided into 3 zones based on its depth. There's the epipelagic zone, or the photic zone, which is basically the zone where sunlight can penetrate. So it goes down about 200 meters. And this is where there's enough light to support photosynthesis for plants and plankton and stuff. And this zone actually makes almost all of the primary production of food for the energy for the ocean comes from this zone. It sinks down from there into the lower areas. Below that is the mesopelagic zone, or the twilight zone. Creepy.
Really?
Yeah. So technically the scientific name is the mesopelagic zone. The sort of more popularized name is the twilight zone, which is wonderful.
Did that popularized name come before or after the show?
I don't know. That I'm not sure about. It could really go either way, honestly. But this is kind of 200 meters to 1,000 meters, so I know, Marcus, I don't remember if you mentioned this. Did you mention the vent you found that was not as deep as...
No, I didn't mention specifically, yeah. So we actually picked a hydrothermal vent. I believe we picked it because it was the shallowest, in the Azores.
Yeah. So most of the vents are 2,000 meters to 2,500 meters down. But these ones they found were 500-ish meters, right? It's 500.
Right.
7.
Squarely in the twilight zone.
Exactly, yeah. Right in the middle of it. So this is kind of where hopefully we'll be building, just because it does make things a lot simpler in a lot of respects. But in this zone, the reason it's called this, it starts where only 1% of the incident light can reach. And then it ends where the light stops going any deeper. So at this point, there's not enough light for photosynthesis. So that sort of takes most standard crop growing off the table. Below that, 1,000 meters and lower, is the bathypelagic, or midnight zone, which is where there is just zero light at this point. Zero natural light, or I guess zero sunlight. The only light down there is from bioluminescence, which makes up a lot of the ocean, which is pretty terrifying.
Midnight zone is a cool name.
It is, yeah, it is.
What was the nickname for the top zone?
It doesn't really have one as broadly used as the twilight or midnight zone. I've seen just sunlight zone. The main one I saw was just photic zone, which is just light zone, basically.
I guess the one that we use the most often, they couldn't think of just a funny name on, and just hide
Right.
it, assuming no other scientists will look at it.
I saw like literally one that was just sunlight zone that I saw nowhere else because it sounds just dumb as hell. So
I vote for noon zone.
noon zone. Yeah.
I vote for the food zone.
The food zone.
I just want the food zone.
The food zone is 100% one of those like convenience stores attached to a gas station that you find like the side of the highway.
Step into the food zone.
Yeah.
We got
Doritos and combos,
jerky.
all you need.
Oh, combos.
Fucking
Don't
combos.
even get me started.
If you talk about energy density,
I've never had a combo.
they're delicious and also awful.
They're so good. I mean,
Really
awful for
bad,
you probably,
yeah.
but they're so good.
There is nothing real in those that quote unquote food.
The tough part is always choosing between the pizza flavor and the pepperoni flavor and the pizza pepperoni flavor and the cheddar pepperoni flavor.
So actually, for me, the real question, the pizza ones were always kind of weird to me. I was always a cheese combos guy, but there's both the crackers cheese and pretzels cheese, which are good in different ways and also bad in the same way.
Anyway.
So we will be almost certainly in the epipelagic zone, so we won't have sunlight. So sort of counteract that, we're going to use what we call vertical farming. So vertical farming is an area that's actually being very heavily developed right now just because we're kind of, as a planet, still increasing people, but not really increasing place we can put crops. So we kind of have to solve that. So the idea of vertical farming is you have these vertically stacked layers of crops in a controlled environment, usually with like LED lighting and then like heavily controlled, like, you know, carbon levels and moisture levels and all of that is like computer controlled to keep it perfect, you know, situation. So a cool thing, speaking of using LEDs for the lighting, do you guys know why plants are green?
Photosynthesis.
But
Chlorophyll.
yes, but beyond that, do you know why that is? Like why that happens?
I feel like this came
Ben,
across
I
my
learned
research
this
in one
once.
of my
Yes.
other questions.
We did this before. We've done this one before. It's hiding.
We did a whole episode on color.
Well, the reason is that green light is actually not absorbed by chlorophyll for use in photosynthesis. It's actually reflected. And the reason that plants do that is to cool themselves down. They pull water up through the roots, all the way through the plant, collecting the heat, and then evaporate it through the leaves, which heat up because they're reflecting the sunlight. So what they've learned is that if you use exclusively red and blue light, you can sort of skip this whole process, and the plants can use the energy they would use to do that to just help themselves grow, which has a fun side effect of making the plants look like black, which is kind of weird in sci-fi. But
they're healthier.
But they're, yeah. Well, and also, like, if you want normal looking plants, you can still use green light. But there is one vertical farming startup, Plant Lab, which I think are Dutch, that use just red and blue light, and they have black plants they grow, which they say it increases the efficiency because they can use that energy to help them, you know, for growth instead.
How is there not a company that just sells these to like normal people?
We'll get there.
Okay.
We're getting there. Really, the limiting factor of these so far has been the energy efficiency of LEDs. Without efficient LEDs, you have to use so much power to grow the crops that you kind of lose out a lot of the efficiency benefits. But that has the efficiency has been increasing pretty rapidly recently. And it's getting to the point where it's becoming much more viable. Other advantages of these systems, so you get more growth time. So with a regular, just, you know, outdoor traditional farm, depending on the climate, you'll get somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 growing hours per year, just because you're, you know, sort of dependent on when the sun is out. Because you are providing the light in these, you can get light to the plants roughly 20 hours a day. You want to give them some time to rest, but that gives you like 7,300 hours of growing time instead, which is like 5 times more.
Jeebus.
Yep. You can use much less water because you can basically keep it as a closed system, and the only water that loss actually happens from just removing the plants, you know, for harvest. So it depends on the system, but they usually have they're roughly 90% more water efficient than traditional farming because you don't have all the, you know, runoff issues and everything you have.
I'm like now listening to this like you're selling me a timeshare. I'm like, all right, what's the catch?
I mean, the catch is obviously that all of this is still very, you know, relatively early technology. There's some commercial use at this point, but it's still, the issue is mostly the LED efficiency, but in theory that will continue increasing. There's one startup that claims 97% water efficiency over traditional farming. That's Terra Farms, which is kind of the one we're going to talk about now for our system, our city here. They have their system. It's basically in like 40-foot shipping containers, like the big standardized shipping containers. And they say that one of those can produce the same yield as 3 to 5 acres of farmland. And they also, I didn't look into any like counter research on this. They claim at this point price parity with traditional farming. I don't know if that's accurate. This is their advertising speak that I'm using right here. I'm sure that there are catches in that, but they say they have price parity with original farming, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it produces 2.5 kilograms of hydrogen per second.
So we would need a lot of these 40-foot shipping containers because I couldn't get a firm number on how many people can be fed from 1 acre of crops. That number is super, super fuzzy because it depends on a lot of factors. But it's at least viable to use one of these vertical farming systems to produce produce for our city. So that's plants. We can get plants. We do obviously need things beyond plants to survive. And the obvious thing we can get is fish. And at first, I was actually pretty worried about this, weirdly, because traditional research suggested that there was actually pretty low, like, biological density in the mesopelagic zone, because only 20% of the primary production of energy that is produced in that top layer falls down there. And then further, only 5% falls down to the bathypelagic zone.
Yeah, and I know in my research for the Challenger Deep specifically, there's like no life down there at all.
Right, exactly. Really, that deep, the only life is like bacteria that grows near the vents, and then things that feed off of those. And you can get some larger life forms that way. But so I was actually concerned that despite being in the ocean, we wouldn't actually have that many fish around. It would be a problem. But the way they used to determine like the biomass of a region of the ocean was basically just by pointing out nets and seeing how many fish they caught, which makes sense. That's a reasonable.
I love basic science.
Science is great. I know. I love it. But it turns out they've actually done this recent research where they used sonar and acoustics to estimate biomass. And they actually have determined that maybe up to 95% of the world's biomass of fish actually lives in the mesopelagic zone. And what they do is they actually live there during the day and then swim up to the epipelagic, the top zone, at night to feed. Because that way they can avoid getting hunted by birds, because birds can't see them in the night. And they just every day do this, like, basically migration up and down. So in theory, there are lots of fish around, but because they live in the dark like this, they have really good low light vision and actually like pressure sensitivity to help them navigate. And that lets them avoid nets really well. So that's why all those earlier studies had trouble seeing how many fish were down there. So obviously we have a slight issue catching them because they're apparently really good at avoiding nets.
just with all our technology and like deep industry and hydrothermal power,
we've built this whole city underwater, but nets.
There's Ben floating out there with a scuba suit and a net, being like, "Damn it!"
To be fair,
they're so fast.
They're good at avoiding nets, but they're not perfect at avoiding nets. We could still catch fish using nets. So people are looking into ways to actually, tap into this population of fish as a food source. But for only 2,500 people, we could get by, I'm sure, with using nets and getting what we get in there and having this extra food source. So I think we will have a decent amount of food that we can be relatively self-sufficient. However, there are still things we are going to have to ship in. So there will be other food people want to have. You don't want to live on hydroponic lettuce and fish exclusively. You're going to want some other luxuries and stuff.
Sounds like a fad diet to me.
It does, actually. We'll have to ship in clothes. We won't be making our own clothes, I'm assuming. There'll be lots of things we have to ship down. And then we'll have to get, will be waste we have to get out as well, I'm sure. So we need some way to, do this supplying and, I guess, offloading of our crap. So really there were two options I saw. One was like basically a space elevator, but underwater. I ruled this out pretty quickly. It was a really cool idea.
It's just a regular elevator.
It is.
It's just an underwater elevator.
It's an underwater elevator. I ruled this out pretty quickly because
start with space elevator.
I don't know, because I guess it is just like a freight elevator. Fuck it, whatever. You get the idea. I don't know, whatever. An inner space elevator. Inner space. But I ruled this out really quickly because I just think like the stability is going to be really bad and it adds like a huge point of failure
Plus, no one's going to get an elevator and hit the button that says Twilight Zone on it. They're just not going to do
Yeah,
it.
that's true.
I would. Are you kidding me?
Would you though, Ben? If you just got into an elevator and it was like floor 1, 2, 3, 4 Twilight Zone.
I mean, I've gone onto the Tower of Terror. It was a lot of fun.
I would 100% hit the Twilight Zone button. Anyway, I ruled it out. So I think the option we want to look into is submarines. And what I wanted to figure out was, is this anything that's actually happened or like people have theorized on? So there actually is a paper on it from 2012 called Logistic Support of a Manned Underwater Production Complex. And the idea of this one was mostly for a deep sea like oil drilling facility or something. But it had all, like the logistic information of, putting the hatches at the top of the facility so it can be used for egress in like a flying situation as long as possible, things like that.
You know what's funny? With all my energy research, I didn't even think about underwater drilling for oil. Just putting it on an oil bed.
I actually didn't think about it until right now, but that would also make a lot of sense, wouldn't it, huh?
Well, I don't want to pollute the ocean around us because we're already struggling with these smart fish with nets.
That's true.
And if we have smart fish that are also just all dead from us poisoning the ocean, that's not going to be good.
Right, yeah. So I guess anyway, find this paper. There has been research like on how you would do this, resupply using submarines. So that exists. Have we ever actually done it? And the answer to that is actually yes, and it's way earlier than you expected. So there was a Wikipedia article titled Merchant Submarines, which is an incredible title I want to point out there. Actually, during World War I, Germany had a pair of merchant submarines that they used to evade the naval blockade and trade with the U.S. There was the Deutschland and the Bremen. The Bremen actually never made a successful voyage. They don't know exactly what happened to it. It may have collided with a British ship south of Iceland or something during its first voyage.
Submarine pirates, obviously, Ben.
Clearly. The Deutschland actually made 2 successful voyages, carried about 700 tons of cargo. After those 2 voyages, they had to just arm it and use it as a regular U-boat, where it did actually sink 43 ships. So very exciting lifetime for this U-boat.
Could you imagine being middle of World War I and you're at a port and you see this German submarine come out and the Germans pop out and they're like, "We have textiles."
Right, seriously. And so the depth on these was only 50 meters. That was the test depth. But admittedly, this was 1916, so I think that in the last, century plus, we probably could do a little bit better. This is actually not the only time it happened, though. It also happened in World War II, also by the Germans. There was the Type 14 U-boat, nicknamed the Milk Cows. There were 10 of them, and they basically were used to extend the range of other U-boats. And they could supply other boats with 600 tons of fuel, 13 tons of motor oil, 4 torpedoes, and fresh food that was preserved in refrigerator units. And this is the most incredible thing. In addition, they are equipped with bakeries so they could provide fresh bread for the crews they were resupplying.
That's the most German
it's
thing I've ever
incredibly
heard.
German.
Oh my god.
It's so great.
I need to send this to my family.
Yeah, it's so perfect.
Fucking Germans.
Yeah, they put bakeries on their resupply U-boats. It's so good. And these actually had a test depth of 240 meters. So, some pretty good gains in that, 35-year jump there. So, I think that pretty clearly, using modern technology, we could make a resupply submarine that we could use to bring in what we needed. I assume the way we would actually do this would have, a platform above the city that, a cargo ship would dock with and unload stuff, and then we'd bring it down with a submarine. We wouldn't, bring it all the way with a submarine, because that seems impractical. But it's at least possible. We could do this submarine resupply, and it has been done before. Way further back in the past than I expected.
I'm never gonna get over this joke. I'm never gonna get over
It's
this
so
U-boat
good.
bakeries.
It's so good.
Welcome to the U-Bakery.
So our underwater city works. We could do this tomorrow.
That might be a bit of a stretch, but
No, we could. I definitely came across a couple articles when I was researching underwater cities where the people are like, yeah, the tech's all there. It's just very, very expensive.
there are underwater research bases that are not this deep, clearly.
They're not that big either.
And they're not that big, right? They're, in the tens of people, but they do exist. It is possible.
And I guess we could acknowledge, too, that, we are doing the cool sci-fi version of the city. If instead of a big dome, if you just, make little houses that are, connected by hallways, kind of
Mm-hmm.
which is another completely legitimate version of an underwater city. You could do it that way, but we decided to go with the big dome because it seemed more fun.
We don't always use the practical ideas here. I don't know if you guys have noticed.
And by we don't always, we mean we never ever.
Right.
All right, you guys ready for a Would You Rather?
Mm-hmm.
We are.
Would you rather drive on the wrong side of the road or drive double the posted speed limit?
Oh.
Depends on where you are.
That's actually a really good point. Well, wait, hold on. Is it? Hold on. Let me think. So, all right. So let's look at like the highway as an example.
Yeah.
On the highway, driving on the wrong side is obviously terrifying.
It's basically the same thing, though, right?
Well,
Well, no, actually,
Relatively.
funnily, driving on the wrong side at the regular speed puts you in a collision that's double the speed of the highway.
Yeah, I guess everyone, if you're on the right side of the road, but you're going double the speed.
I guess if you hit somebody, it's 1 time speed, but if you hit something, it's also double speed and you're dead.
right.
I'll go on record here, and Absurd Hypotheticals does not recommend doing either of these
Yes,
things. Please
please do
drive
not.
responsibly.
Please do not.
But if you had to choose one,
Oh God, both of these seem like such a bad idea.
On the right side of the road, double the speed, I think, is the obvious choice now that I think about it.
But when you're okay on the highway though, that's driving like 140 miles per hour.
Yeah, but if you hit another car, like they're still going at speed normally in the same direction as you, so it's not going to be as bad.
Oh, okay. That is true.
also, like, the posted speed limit is kind of lower than what you're normally driving, so you're driving, like, I'm usually driving, like, 1.2, 1.3 times the speed limit.
Yeah, most people go over the posted.
So, okay, counterpoint. If you're driving on the wrong side of the road, you could put your hazards on and drive 20 miles per hour.
Oh yeah, I guess you don't have to.
You don't have to drive the speed limit.
Right. But then it'll take you forever to get wherever you want to go.
Yeah, but going somewhere slowly is better than going dead quickly.
Well, you'll probably, I mean, it's still dangerous.
It is, yeah. But it's not a straight comparison that way. So here's my argument. My argument is traffic. Traffic, if you're driving double the speed limit, is far, far, far worse than just like standard driving. Traffic, if you hit traffic or driving the wrong way, you're safer. You're good.
Yeah, if the air's already trafficy and you're just going the wrong way, you could just kind of, like,
Everybody
slowly
drives
move
slow.
between
You're
people.
good. Come on.
That's true. Yeah, I guess
That is interesting.
you're saying you have to go double the speed limit. You can't stop at all, right?
I mean, even if you're allowed to stop with traffic, you still have to stop from 140 miles per hour to stopped.
Yeah.
That's a point, too, is that your car is designed to be maneuverable at, 70.
Right.
Your car's not designed to be super maneuverable at 140.
Exactly.
So when you're going 140, you're kind of just like a slight turn. Even if the road is empty,
Yeah.
you have a slight turn will kill you. I guess the thing is, if there's regular traffic going regular highway speed, in any case you're fucked.
Right.
If you're going double the speed on one side or the wrong direction on the other side, you're dead. If it's super trafficy, you want to be on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's totally empty, you want to be on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it's normal if all the cars are going normal speed, it's better to be on the right side going double.
That is true. I guess at normal speed, you want to be on the right side because you could theoretically get through. You could manage that. You could manage your car going 140 and make it through some amount of traffic.
Yeah.
So the middle case of regular traffic, you want to be on the right side, and the corner cases or other cases on the left side, if you live in Boston, is you want to be on the opposite side of the road.
But we have to choose one.
Yeah, you have to choose one.
So I'll also say that for like non-highway driving, I think other side is probably still better.
Yes, non-highway driving, the opposite side's better.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with like lights and stuff.
Right, definitely, yeah.
But the posted speed limits are less. So you only got to go although if it's 40 and you're going 80, that's a lot for a town.
And even like 30 and 60 is bad. I think I'm going to go wrong side. Like,
Yeah, I think
obviously
based
both are
on that.
really bad, but
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna say double, only on the based on that people are familiar with someone driving too fast. People are not ready for you to come head on.
that's fair. Have you ever had that? This is gonna sound weird. You ever had that happen?
Someone driving the wrong side of the road?
Yeah.
Towards you?
Yep.
I've had it like not in a way that was actually dangerous, but sometimes like on 2-lane roads, like out away from the city where there's passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so people pass that way, and then so you're driving along this 2-lane road, and you see 2 sets of headlights in front of you, and you're like, oh god!
Yeah.
But then they pass the other car and it's safe.
I've seen some people, because I drive in the city sometimes at like in the middle of the night because of my job, and there are people that get confused about like the signage in one-way streets, and I've had people go the wrong way before while I was on them.
I saw one. There's a road near here it's like the divided road where there's like a median between the two sides, and one side is one way and the other side is the other way, you know? And someone turning onto it, I think, didn't realize that and turned out going the wrong way. And I went through a traffic light and turned onto it, and there's just a pickup truck staring at me, and I'm like, huh. They weren't moving. like they had realized their issue clearly and were trying to fix it, so they were stopped. But there was just like a truck, and I was like, that's not right.
Nope.
You're not supposed to be here, man. And so someone just on the wrong side of the road that's doing literally nothing already is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that is a very compelling piece of evidence, but I think I will still go wrong side of the road.
I think I'm going to go wrong side of the road too, just because of that, like, if you're not on the highway thing.
I live for speed. I'm going to go twice as fast. And that'll do it for this week. If you enjoyed what you listened to and you want to support us directly, then you can hop onto our Patreon at www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals, where you can use your hard-earned dollars to directly support the show and get a lot of cool things in return, like our special monthly behind-the-scenes episodes, some discounts on merch, early access to the episodes, among all other cool things that we put up there. So go ahead and feel free to hop on there and give us your wonderful, wonderful money. Or if you don't want to do that, it's super free just to leave a review for us on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you don't want to do any of that, or if you've done that already, you can join us next week where we answer the following question. What if an element from the periodic table was missing?